بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. We are continuing our lessons of comparative religion and we're on lesson 7 of our course. And today we're going to talk about monotheism. Now, in the English language, mono means one, and poly means more than, it means three or more. Dual means two. So when you have this attached to a word, like you have dualism, monotheism, you have uh you have dualism, or maybe I don't know, that's not a word, but this kind of idea. Dualist, those who believe in two deities. You have polytheism, idolatry. Now, both of these in Islamic sense, in Islamic understanding, are sure. Both of these are idolatry. Then you have monotheism. Monotheism means that there is one God. Theos in Greek means God. That's why theology, the study of God. Monotheism, one God. So the belief of one God. So in this lesson, we're going to start to compare the fundamentals of the Abrahamic religions. So our first one on the topic is monotheism. Monotheism. One of the most important prayers to Judaism is a recitation of some verses found in Deuteronomy. These recitation is called the Shema. Shema means to hear. Samia means he heard in Arabic, right? Samia. So this is very similar. Again, you can see when you compare the languages, you can see a similar sounds, right? What is this Shema? Shema literally means hear. This Shema is recited in the mornings and evenings. We'll talk about the time exactly for this, and you'll have some practical law comparison here. So in the morning and the evening, we as Muslims, we have a morning and evening prayer as well. We have Fajr prayer in the morning and, well, pre-dawn, right? And Maghrib after sunset. Shema is chapter 6 of Devarim. Devarim is Deuteronomy, verse 4 and 9, 4 to 9, verse 4 to 9. We will only examine some of this recitation or the Shema prayer for comparative purpose, but there's more that can be looked at in regards to this. But first, let's explain what the morning Shema is. In Jewish laws, it states that the best time for this recitation of the morning Shema is after it begins to get light out, but before sunrise. So you can see the light in the horizon, but the sun has not risen yet. That technically is still within Fajr time for us. Does it sound familiar? So that is, according to Jewish laws, the best time to recite the Shema before the sun rises. When you can see a light, but the sun hasn't risen yet. This is similar to the time of Fajr prayer or Subh prayer for the Muslims. Now, many Jews, they begin shortly before the sunrise. So they begin shortly before the sunrise. So they can perform a prayer called Amida. So they have another prayer called Amida, which is considered time of the Amida is at sunrise. So what they do is they combine them both, right? They do them next to each other. They do the they do the Shema right before the sun rises, and then the time for this Amida is after the sun rises. So it's time as the sunrise, they recite then the Amida. So that's why they'll do them right there close to the end of the sunrise time. Hence, they will perform them both. Now, if one misses this time, if one misses this recitation time, what should they do according to Jewish law? They should still recite it as part of their morning prayer, as part of their Amida. But the reward will be less for the recitation than reciting it earlier. Now, maybe you could have a common point here, a similar point that we have, Kava. You missed the time, say like you overslept, you still owe it. You have to make it up. So if we miss a prayer, we will be required to make it up later in Islamic laws. You know, uh, as long as it's not an exempt type, like person has insanity or something. Okay, so that's the morning Shema. What about the evening Shema? What time is the evening Shema? The time for reciting the Shema, this Shema prayer in Jewish laws, is when 3 stars become visible in the night sky. So 3 stars become visible in the night sky. In Islam, sunset is the time for Maghrib prayer. Now, there's a difference of opinion amongst Shia jurists. It's an old disagreement. Some scholars say that you can pray when the sun disk disappears from the horizon. So at sunset, you could pray your Maghrib prayer. You could break your fast. Like the late Sayyid al-Hakim. Sayyid Sayyid al-Hakim. Other scholars, they said, no, you have to wait until the redness in the eastern horizon disappears. So it's like 10, 15 minutes after that. Sayyid Sistani, he has a wajib ihtiyat here to wait. So one is free to go to another qualified jurist according to his rules of taqlid for the ruling. Or they wait, right? They wait according to his rules about the redness. So you can check his fatwa and analyze it. So it is not a Shia Sunni thing. Yes, Shia and Sunni share common fatwas here. This is a Shia thing. There are narrations from the Ahlul Bayt in which scholars are interpreting and trying to understand, and some of them have reached the opinion that you can pray at sunset. And you see even Sayyid Sistani here is a little hesitant on the evidences. So no, to those people that keep going around and painting this as a sectarian issue, stop doing that. Go and learn the narrations of Ahlul Bayt. Go study Bath al-Kharij before you put things out. So, there are differences of opinion amongst the Shia scholars about when to pray Maghrib prayer. A difference of opinion that's either 10 to 15 minutes, roughly, approximately. This is due to the reconciliation of the narrations from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and the method the marja takes on it. So those experts in usul fiqh, right? How they work with and handle, how they do fiqh al-hadith and how they do interpretation of the narrations, how they solve the problems of reconciliation of the narrations. This is what the result would end up different. Anyhow, the Jews, they believe they should recite their Shema prayer before midnight. So the Jews, they believe that they should recite their Shema prayer before midnight. However, they consider him as fulfilling it if he did so before dawn. Again, does this sound familiar? Okay, say okay. There's Shema prayers in the Maghrib time, right? Um, and but there's difference of opinion when our Maghrib time begins, and we're judging our Maghrib time on the disappearance of the sun disk, and some uh, some scholars redness disappearing. We're not looking at stars when stars appear and such. That's probably a bit later. You have to time it. But still, technically, we could pray our Maghrib prayer then, right? It's just not the earliest time. But what about the ending time of Maghrib prayer? Well, the ending time of Maghrib prayer is midnight, unless you have a reason, according to some scholars, then it's until Fajr time, right? You could look at the fatwa of your marja and see. So the Jews, they believe that they should recite the Shema before midnight. However, they consider a person as fulfilling it if they do so before dawn. We also have special timing for prayer up until midnight, and some rules if extending it until Fajr time. That's just before Fajr time begins, right? Okay, so now you can see comparative aspect between the prayer times. Okay, we both have a prayer that we are reciting in the Fajr time and the Maghrib time. Interesting, right? Okay, the Jews, they believe they have to pray 3 prayers per day, right? And we have 5 daily wajib prayers a day. So what about these prayers? So Jews, they pray the Amida in morning, afternoon, and evening. 3 prayers, which is what is practiced now, contain some sort of bowing. Similarly, we have in Islam 5 prayers in 3 periods of times: Fajr, Dhuhrain, Maghribain. And there's Fadila time in between. Again, I want to point out those people who want to paint it as a sectarian issue, right? It's not a Sunni Shia issue. We have Fadila time. Yes, you pray Dhuhr 30, 40 minutes after, you check your Marja lead on how he determines how long after is the Fadila time, then you could do Asr. Or you separate it with something, a dua, something, uh, you takbirato ihram, or takbirato, the 3 takbirs or something. Yeah, you could pray Asr right after Dhuhr, but it's better to wait for the Fadila time. So we have 5 prayers, and it's prayed in 3 periods of time. Now, as you see, the Jews have these 3 Amidas. They do one in the afternoon, evening, and in the morning. That morning one, though, is at sunrise, right? And you have the Shema, which is recited in the Fajr time and the um and in the Maghrib time area. This Amida though has a kind of like sort of bowing, but it's possible there's different variations amongst some prayers. With Judaism, it's possible you have to look into what the ancient form of it was and what the different variations between different groups of um, of Jews were historically. Judaism nowadays is highly influenced by Ashkenazi Judaism, highly influenced. Okay, now this is the Shema. So now you see a comparative about prayers. What about this monotheism? Okay, so you could say that prayer is an aspect of monotheism in worship, right? Prayer is to God, right? Prayer, we believe prayer is something we must do, and they have prayer as well. Although the form of it is different and it's not exactly the same, we have prayer, they have prayer, basically at the common, understand. Okay, so this is the Shema, right? I keep mentioning the Shema. So Shema goes Shema Yisrael. Then it has this up here. You see these Yud, Ha, Vav, Vav, Hey, uh, Elohicha, Elohina. Sorry, Elohina. There's that Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yud, Nun, Nun, right? Elohina. Then it has the Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Okay, Echad. Echad. Okay, Echad. Okay. Now this Yud Hey Vav Hey, there's much discussion about it, but it basically it's not how it's pronounced. Uh, um, yeah, maybe it's Yahwa, Yah, yeah, Yahuwah, yeah, something like this. Maybe we'll bring it here, inshallah. But what it means, Ehya means he is, right? He lives. So this is like indicating the attribute of living. Like we have Al-Hayy, Al-Hayy in Arabic, the living. Allah is Al-Hayy, the living. So this is he is the one who is living. He is and was and is always is. This is the kind of meaning that they say that this Yahweh kind of name signifies. But so it's Hear, O Israel. So hear, O Israel, meaning Bani Israel. The living God is our God, Elohina. The living God, the living is one. Echad. Echad. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? Ahad. Kul huwa Allahu ahad. Right? I'll bring it. Okay. Then the next part here, I'll read the English for you. You shall love the Lord your God. Again, it has this Yud He Vav He. Okay. You shall love the Lord your God. Bichul livavika, o bichul nafshika, o bichul modicha. Okay. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart. O bichul livavika, o bichul nafshika, and with all your soul. Now here's another similar Arabic. Nafs, nafsh. Okay. And with all your might. So do we have a problem with that? No. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. Yes, this is a good thing. And these words which I command you today shall be upon your heart, and you shall teach them thoroughly to your children, and you shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk on the road, when you lie down, and when you rise, and you shall bind them as a sign upon your hand, and they shall be for a reminder between your eyes. So this here, the Ashkenazis, they take as a literal. They say that's why they bind those little like boxes with the straps um, around them. They have some verses in them, and they bind them around them, right? But maybe we could understand an internal meaning, a batini meaning to these. You shall bind the sign upon your hand. Maybe that is maybe just saying possible. Maybe it's something to do with your actions. Make sure you put work your actions in love for God, right? And they shall be a reminder between your eyes. You know, your mind. Uh, your sight. Maybe things like this. But this is what they take as literal for for the binding things on them and such. Now in fiqh hadith we need a karina to say it's metaphorical, right? So we need a clue of context. So, anyways, and it continues, and you shall write them upon your doorpost of your house and upon your gates. There's a mezuzah or this little like canister they put in by their doors. And you see it's the Marathons, they have a little plaque, they put there. Okay. So is there a problem in meaning with these words? No, not necessarily, not the way we've understood them here. So let's have a little analysis. So we have here, O Israel, the living God is our God, and the Lord, the living God is one. Echad. According to the famous Jewish scholar, you need to know this name for comparative research, Maimunitz. They call him Rambam. He lived in Andalusia. His name is Mushi bin Maimun. So Musa ibn Maimun. He had set 13 principles of Jewish belief. So he has like we have usul din. He has 13 principles of Jewish belief. So if a person steps outside, disbelieves in one of those principles, they are not considered in the folds of Judaism. So those 13 principles of Jewish belief that one must adhere to be considered in Judaism. The first principles concerns the topic. The first principles that he talks about concerns the topic of the existence of God. In Islam, we have usul din. Our scholars tell us about usul din. They are those principal beliefs which bind us in the folds of Islam. And according to the majority of our scholars, these are three: Tawheed, Nubuwwah, and Ma'ad. These are usul din, meaning if anybody doesn't reject those, they believe in these things, they believe in the uniqueness of God, the prophethood, and the day of resurrection, they are within the folds of Islam. But if they reject one of these, they step outside of the folds of Islam. So Sunni, Shia, we're all Muslims according to a majority of our scholars. But there are two more. You may remember, you've probably learned that there are five usul. What about imama and adl? Well, imama and adl, the justice of Allah and the successorship of the Prophet, these are usul madhab. These are essential beliefs to be considered on the path and as followers in a theological sense of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So if a person rejects one of those, then he is not considered as the within the folds of the followers of the Shia Islam from a Kalami perspective. But he may be a Sunni or something. So this is an important distinction. Now, if somebody rejects something like that, and they know this is problem, right? But if they don't believe in it, then this is they just don't know it. They may be still Muslim. And Adallah, the justice of Allah, is something that the Mu'tazilites and the Shia have in common. We call the people of Adliya. But the Asha'ira, the Sunni that's highly influenced the Sunni theology, they don't have that one. Okay, so we have the importance of Tawheed. Tawheed is actually the most fundamental message of all prophets and the most fundamental message of Islam. It's the most important thing. So of course, Maimonides has fundamentals mentioned in prophethood in those 13 related to the Torah and Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and as well as resurrection as well. But the difference between us and them is that we have an emphasis on the seal of the prophets. We believe in all the former prophets, but we also believe in Prophet Muhammad. So if someone doesn't believe in Prophet Muhammad, they're not in the folds of Islam. He also has, within those 13 principles, he has the reward and punishment. Reward and punishment. And also the Masonic Creed. Masonic Creed. Okay? So let's have a look at this Shema and compare it a little bit. You have this Shema Yisrael, the living God is our God. The living God is one. It's just roughly translating on what they kind of say this meaning of this word is. So this phrase found in the current version of the Torah, the Pentateuch, may remind you of a very similar Quranic ayat, which all of you should be reciting, at least regularly sometimes in some of your daily prayers. Why should you be? Because it's good to do, and it's a good reminder. Which we often recite in our prayers, namely Surah Tawheed or Surah Ikhlas, you may call it. In fact, Surah Tawheed lays out the fundamental monotheism. If you just look and analyze Surah Tawheed, Surah 112 of the Holy Quran, it lays out the fundamental monotheism. So let's just examine the first verse here and see the similarities between the verse found in Deuteronomy. Qul huwa Allahu ahad. Say he is Allah, the one. We can see that the common meaning is present here, that Allah is one. This is that there is no one at all like Allah the Exalted. Allah is the only God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only God. There is no other God. Both the Shema and Surah Tawheed contain a similar name for God. What is that? Allah. You see here? Elohina, our God. Allah. Allah. So it's here. It's the similar name is here. It also contains the similar name for uniqueness, one that there is no other than in Arabic. There's no other like him. Ahad. And this is Echad. Echad, Ahad. So it has similar name for Allah, Elohinu, and Ahad and Echad. So you see, it is having a similar basic meaning between them. In fact, according to Maimunid's 13 principles, he mentions it to be required to believe in the existence of the Creator, which is perfect and is the primary cause for all things that exist. God is absolute and unparalleled unity. God is non-corporal. What does corporal mean? Corporal means having a physical body. So God does not have a physical body. We're agreeing with Momenids here. God is not affected by physical occurrences such as movement and rest and dwelling. God is eternal, and worship is only for God, not any false, fake, so-called deities. You may recall in Surah Al-Hamd, which you have to recite 2 times in every prayer. You may recall this phrase, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in in Surah Al-Hamd. You alone we worship, and you alone we ask for help, talking to Allah the Exalted. So as a comparative point here, we see many, many things we could agree with over here in these principles that he mentions. Many things that we could agree with, which are maybe unknown to many people, but this is very important things about Allah the Exalted that we could agree with. Now, of course, there's things that probably we aren't going to agree with, but we have to investigate. But this we can really agree with. And the rest of Surah Tawheed, which states, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ, and other verses and teachings of the Quran and authentic Islam unveil to us that we could agree with many of these principles. Okay, now what about this name that has the Yud, He, Vav, He? When in the Hear, O Israel, the living God is our God, and the living God is one. What's this Yahweh or Yahva? What is this? Why not pronounce the name? So you have to investigate the history, why they don't pronounce it, and see. According to Karaite Jews, which used to be more and now they're less in number, they don't believe in the oral Torah, right? Karaite Jews, they seem to say, from one of the scholars or one of the people from them that I seen, they suggest that there was a persecution to say persecution to say the name of God. So the Jews, they had hidden the name, and eventually it turned into a superstition amongst the rabbinical views. Hence, it became a law. Hence, the Karaite Jews believe they can pronounce it, but they should do so in a respectful sense, honorable sense, and not just throwing it around like uselessly. And that's according to Karaite Jews. You have to go and investigate and see more what's said from the non-Karaite Jews. Assuming this is the sacred name, assuming this is the sacred name, as actual spelling. Now we have some research here and maybe even some disagreement when coming to the Islamic sources. We have to analyze things, but we're just saying they're assuming this is a sacred name, right? That shouldn't be said. Um, as you see, they're not having a problem saying Elohina, Elohicha, Elo, but they're having a problem saying this name, which indicates the living, right? The living God. So assuming this is the sacred name as actual and as it's actually spelled, and not just a symbol to signify the sacred name of God, which is possible. This is what they call the tetragrammaton. That's the name that I couldn't get in the last lesson. Tetragrammaton. This is a four letters in Hebrew. Here, the Yud, He, Vav, He. And some scholars hold that in ancient Hebrew, there was no Vav, there was no V, it was a Wow. It was a Wow. So, so this basically means the eternal. It means he was, he is, and he will always be. This is the kind of meaning that they have with this word. Hence some view its pronunciation as Yehweh or or Yahweh. Not Jehovah. They add the J when they came into English, right? Uh, or not Jehovah either, because it's according to that view, it's a wow, not a va. In Arabic, we have a similar names. We have similar names for God, but most importantly, a similar concept for God. You know, we have Al Hayy, the living Al Hayy. So we believe God always exists. In Islam, we believe Allah, the Exalted, always exists. Hence, Al Hayy, the living. He is the living. He's the living. He doesn't die. He always is, always was, and always will be. Ihya Asher Ihya in the Hebrew Bible is I am which I am. And similar words here, just different from Ihya, the first person. The Ihya is the first person, so Yahweh is just a similar word. It's not in the first person. Okay, so in the book Perki Avov, uh, this is this is a book related to ethics in Judaism. We find a quote attributed to Shimon the righteous. He was a high priest during the second temple period, who died more than 270 years approximately before the Common Era. Antagonus from Soko received it from uh, Shimon the righteous. He says it's kind of like a hadith, right? In this book it says Antagonus from Soko from Shimon the righteous. Now this is the quote. Do not be like those slaves who serve their master only because they want reward. Rather, be like those slaves who serve their master regardless of any reward. And may the awe of heaven be upon you. So, the interpretation that they give in Judaism, offered in the mentioned book, on these words are to perform the commandments merely because they were demanded by God and out of awe of Him, realizing His greatness rather than with the aim of achieving the reward for these observances. They say to serve God out of love. So you're doing it not for reward, you're doing it because God commanded it. He deserves it. He's great. Love is a topic we shall leave for now. And the rest of the commentary on this ethical advice. But briefly, love can be viewed by some from an aspect as an emotional state that requires thought behind it to influence that emotion. Now, you have to check what's our philosophical ideas of love because there's some different understandings of it. This is an idea. It's like so, like Ibn Sina, he would say that love is the joy of the you have about the beloved, right? So you have that kind of pleasure, happiness. Um, and more can probably be gone on that. You could look into these things. So this is an idea. This that thought is behind action to influence the emotion. So thought is behind the emotion to influence the emotion. This is an idea and is a direction that can be pondered on from an aspect in Jewish and Islamic spirituality, right? From Kabbalah and Irfan. So before we end, let's look at one of the reliable hadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam about love and about obedience to Allah with love. So I'll just read it here. This is from Ali ibn Ibrahim. So this is in Al-Kafi from his teacher, from Sheikh Khulini's teacher, who has narrated from his father, Ibrahim ibn Hashim, from Ibn Mahbub, from Jamil, Jamil ibn Daraj, I assume Jamil ibn Daraj, from Harun ibn Kharija, from Abu Abdullah al-Islam. Abu Abdullah al-Islam is Imam Sadiq al-Islam. Says Abu Abdullah has said, there are three kinds of worship. There are three kinds of worship. Al-Ubada Thalathatun. There are people who worship Allah, the most majestic, the most holy, because of fear. Because of fear. Khawfan. Because of fear. This kind of worship is the worship of what? Al-Abid. Ibadatu al-Abidi. This is the worship of the slaves. You know, they're scared their master is going to punish them, so they worship. There are people who worship Allah, the most blessed, the most high, for his reward. Talaba athawabi is seeking his thawab, his reward. This is the worship of the merchants, someone you hire. This is the worship of the hire, not the merchants. Al-ajara'i, the one for hire. Somebody does the work, and he does the work for the pay. Okay. There are people who worship Allah, the most majestic, the most holy, hubban lahu, for love for him. This is the worship, ibadatu al-ahrari wa hiya afdalu al-ibadah. This is the worship of the free people. And this is the most meritorious kind of worship. Now, all three of these types of worship are acceptable. People are at differing levels. But the best kind is to worship sincerely for love of Allah the Exalted, out of love of Allah the Exalted, not caring what I get, not caring if I get a reward for it or if I get punished. What matters is that I love Allah the Exalted, and that's what I'm doing it. That's a higher level. But there's the other levels are all okay. God has offered these other levels. He's put the fear there in the if you look at Quranic ayats, and he's offered reward. That's maybe most people are going to have to function like that. So don't disregard people's efforts. But if you want to get to a higher level yourself, seek to develop and cultivate love for Allah the Exalted. So as you can see from a comparative aspect, we also have a similar thing about love for Allah the Exalted. So that is everything for this lesson. Wa akhiru du'ana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.